Hello everyone, welcome to yet another Nuraldeen episode. Today we are very proud to host two very distinguished guests. First is Professor Ashok Swain, of a professor of peace and conflict studies at Uppsala University in Sweden. In addition to that, he is also the UNESCO chair on water conflict and the UNESCO chair at Uppsala universities. These are just a very small number of his accomplishments and his designation. He's also SIPRI climate change body fellow. We know that that was very influential in drafting the UN climate change policies and other things. And Professor Swain has been very interested in and very vocal about international affairs surrounding Bangladesh and India. And for that, he has suffered a lot from his homeland, the original homeland, India. We will come to that during our discussion. But welcome, Professor Swain.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
And again, we have a repeat guest, John Danilowicz, US State Department and ex-diplomat, who has an extensive career working in Bangladesh and has been, since retiring from the State Department, has been active in the foreign policy community and the global discussion communities surrounding issues of Bangladesh. And he's a frequent commentator on Bangladesh, both in social media and also in different programs. So let us start. Professor Rumi Ahmed, okay, do you want to start?
Yes, this is Rumi Ahmed Khan. I am a physician, I'm a political commentator, activist, blogger. I'm currently a professor at University of Texas, Austin. I will welcome both our guests. Both of them, I believe, deep in my heart, are true friends of Bangladesh people. And not only Bangladesh people, they're the true friends of people who are oppressed, who are deprived of democracy. Bangladesh is my point, that's why I'm saying Bangladesh. And I cannot be more grateful to anyone but more than these two for their help, support about Bangladesh's last 16 years of struggle for justice and democracy. So let me start my first discussion with Professor Swain. Professor Swain, for the people from Palestine to Pakistan, from Delhi to Dhaka, you have been a relentless advocate for justice, democracy, tolerance, and a loud and feared voice against fundamentalism, bigotry, and those transnational bullies. I even heard you even cannot go back to your home country, India, because the government is scared of you. This is a lot of work, lot of emotional stress, lot of effort, and a lot of sacrifice for sure. What drives you? Why you do what you do? And do you feel you are in the winning side or losing side of it at the present time?
Oh, thank you for asking me this question. I think it's it's the winning and losing doesn't really matter, because if you are fighting for a cause, and it's the fight matters rather than succumbing to that any kind of threat or any kind of injustice, because winning and losing depends on many things. I have done research on the protest movement for a long period of time. I studied protest movement. It's always many other factors involved in any sort of protest, whether you are win or lose, depending on what the final result will be. But if you don't fight, then and you succumb to the injustice, you succumb to this the kind of standing for the humanity, then you have a problem there. So saying that, I think it's in a sense, of course, there have been, but it's not exactly because there is somewhere people have said that the academics should not be politically neutral. I agree to some extent they should be politically neutral uh, when the politics is actually going on in a regular way. That when you are the traditional political actors engaged in a political activities, we understand there are certain kind of ideological difference will be. Those ideological differences are accepted within the larger norms of the society and the civilized society. Then, of course, then we understand it. But when the way, particularly in various parts of the world, far right ideology in different forms, even in certain places, far left ideology in certain forms, going into a area where you are the basic human rights or basic freedom are in danger, and particularly for academics. If academics will stay out of giving this kind of say that, look, this doesn't affect us. Yes, in many ways it doesn't. On the surface it doesn't affect us, but when you are a part of society, you have you have you are for you go to the society to stand up. You are getting the taxpayers' resources to say what you think you should have the knowledge to say about. If we as a researcher, we as a diplomat, or we as an academic will not say about what actually these are means or how we define it, then who will say that? And I think this is where the look at it. If you look the academics, how the academics are being affected, which books, school books are what school book politics going on. The history is being rewritten. How I mean, in the US, there is even discussions that they will take away the Department of Education. These are the things. If the academics will not come out and say that, look, this is what uh, is really part of our. Even if we say that, look, we don't care about the society. We have our job is fine, but even our jobs are in danger when the society goes into that direction. So people have to say. So you cannot say that everybody will stand up and say that. It hasn't happened ever before. Some people don't say, but some people will have to say. And for those some people who will say, that's why we run the system and the system goes on like this. So it's not that I cannot complain that others are not saying and some others are not saying, some others are saying, but that's the part of the society. But that's the way I see it. It's a part of our academic duty as a professor, as a human duty to stand up for wherever, because human rights is not confined to a particular country or a particular society. It's a global good and it has to be protected anywhere, everywhere.
Thank you, sir. Shafiq?
Yeah, my next question would be to John. Like it's in a two-part question. So for the convenience of the audience, I will ask the first part and then the next because I don't want to lump them together. So John, recently you wrote a very interesting article in the Benar News. It's called India's March of Folly in Bangladesh, where you highlighted that the the campaign that Indian media and social media that directed towards Bangladesh, that it's like making Bangladesh the new Pakistan, as you can say, some of you may say, and like heightening the threat from Bangladesh and depicting Bangladesh in a very negative light. This has counter effect. Like you said that this has united Bangladesh and made India's relationship development with Bangladesh more difficult. And I can vouch for that. Like even in living abroad and talking to people in Bangladesh, I see that the elites and the society in Bangladesh is more than united against Indian this campaign than ever. Bangladesh has been always ambivalent about India because India is the indispensable nation for us, and there is a big community who has been more sympathetic to India, particularly its secular credentials, its democracy, and all that. But because of this Indian campaign, there is like a newfound unity among Bangladesh elite and society that like India has made Bangladesh, a small country, an unnecessary foe, an enemy. So I just wanted to get a brief synopsis from your article. Like, can you just, because it's a very interesting article, can you say a few words about the article that you wrote?
Sure, thanks, and thanks for the invitation to join you. I should start again with a disclaimer that I'm a retired U.S. diplomat. So what I say are my own views. They don't reflect the views of the United States government. I'm a bit of an amateur historian, and am particularly a aficionado of military history. And one of the books which I read was by Barbara Tuchman, a historian who wrote a book called The March of Folly. And what this is about is it's a series of historical case studies in which countries act against their own self-interest. And I say this with humility because there are multiple examples of the United States acting against its own self-interest. In her book, Barbara Tuchman highlights the US experience in Vietnam, where the US over a number of years pursued a policy which was against its own self-interest. Thinking about Bangladesh and thinking about the 1971 period, I can also argue that the United States acted against its long-term self-interest, and certainly the United States' standing in Bangladesh post-1971 suffered because of the mistakes that the Nixon administration made. So when I look at strategy, I look at what is the end state that a country wishes to achieve. What are the long-term interests of a country? And when I think about relationships between countries, they're not just about relationships between governments, but they're relationships between people. So as I look at India's actions in Bangladesh at the present moment, I'm puzzled at how this serves India's long-term interests. I understand the dynamic during the Hasina years, and I understand India's interests in Bangladesh. And one can argue that in the short term, India achieved some of its objectives by supporting the Hasina government. Yet in the summer of 2024, the people of Bangladesh demonstrated that they had had enough. They wanted to chart a different destiny for themselves. And Sheikh Hasina was forced to flee from Bangladesh, not because of some imaginary foreign regime change plot, but because the people of Bangladesh had demonstrated that they had had enough. And they paid for this with the blood of their young people. So the reality in Bangladesh is that Sheikh Hasina is not coming back. No one can turn the clock back to before July 2024. So my advice to India, not that they've asked for it, but the advice that I would give if I were asked, is that India should think about how to maximize its long-term interests in Bangladesh and the relationship not only with the country of Bangladesh and the government of Bangladesh, but the people of Bangladesh. And from what I see of the cold shoulder that the Modi government has given to Professor Yunus, the disinformation that's coming from the media, from the establishment, from online actors coming from India, all this is doing is fanning the flames of anti-Indian sentiment, which not only makes it more difficult for the current government to have a new relationship with India, but it's going to hurt, I think, Indian interests over the longer term, as the next elected government will be forced to appeal to a more anti-Indian electorate. So this is my assessment of the situation.
Thank you very much. My next question is related to the social media campaign. And I will ask Professor Swain the same question because both of you are very much victim of like a mass attack in the social media. Now we understand that India is the world's largest English-speaking country, and there are a lot of people who are active in social media. So that's why there are lot many people who comment on the social media, and it gets like a magnified effect. Now, my question is that like, do you think that it's just like self-motivated ideological people who do this, or like, is there any kind of top level direction involved, like to attack individuals, to organizing involved in driving the social media attacks? And secondly, does these social media attacks affect you personally, and do you think that this has, because social media is very important, we know, at least in domestic politics in all these countries, India, America, all their country, but does this social media attacks on a country or a people, does this have any policy effect on the governments, or they just ignore it, they do it their business as they see fit? So yeah, my question is that like, how do you navigate this, and do you think that they are like a top level directed? What do you think?
So I should start by saying that I'm not an expert on India and I'm not an expert on social media. But as you mentioned, over the past several months, as I've been active in advocating for a new Bangladesh and supporting the efforts of the Bangladesh interim government and advocating for close relations between the United States and Bangladesh, I've become a target of these online mobs, those supporting the previous government in Bangladesh, those direct beneficiaries, many of whom have fled, and their supporters, including international supporters. I can't say where these campaigns start, but I can say from my experience, these are coordinated attacks. It's very clear that there's linkage between individuals who are putting out this false propaganda, this disinformation, and then it's how it's amplified and used by others, not just within the Indian ecosphere, but around the world, including in the United States. Again, I question what these individuals are trying to achieve. I think one of their goals is to bully and silence their critics. And again, by the crude nature of their attacks, which I know Professor Swain and others have suffered far more than I have, these are very vile attacks. They're baseless, and they're meant to denigrate and defame and demean their intended targets. These individuals don't engage on substance. In fact, because I don't think they can engage on substance, so they engage in these personal attacks. In my particular case, I can say that it's been counterproductive because all it's done is motivate me more and show me that what I'm doing is having some impact, because if it weren't, then I wouldn't be such a target. But I think as others have pointed out, this is a serious issue which should be part of bilateral engagements between countries that work with the Indian government. Because again, I think what this does is it also poisons the environment, for India and for bilateral relationships for India with other countries. And we can certainly see this in the United States, that, while there are many Indian Americans who are making fabulous contributions, some of these more extreme voices are really poisoning public discourse. As to whether this has an impact on policymakers, certainly in general, social media is important, and there's a linkage between traditional and new media. So I think it's important to be active on this space, which is partially why I engage. But again, I think all that those bots and trolls are doing is showing a side of India that is maybe the side that India doesn't want to show to the rest of the world. But again, I defer to the real experts like Professor Swain on this.
Yeah, Professor Swain, we like to hear your perspective on the social media blitzkrieg that's going on, people on you and others who are daring stand against the Hinduttvadi movement in India.
Thank you. I think I will tell a little bit about the media, then I will move to the social media part. The Indian media has been pro-establishment traditionally has been quite pro-establishment, but it had kept certain kind of some sort of neutrality to some extent before, though there is a pro-establishment slant, but it was keeping a neutral voice. And previous governments, they have been using the media in some ways, but what has happened the last 10 years, the Indian media scene has completely changed. It has not only following the government's, promoting the government's policies there, and that has become the major megaphone of the Hindutva government, which is run by Modi. And that their main emphasis has been about Hindu nationalism and India's Hindu nationalism. And for that, they have actually ruined the relationship or deteriorated the relationship, India's relationship with not only, I'm not getting into the Indian own internal politics, but the external politics. Like, they have been previously anti-Pakistan, anti-China, that is somehow, but then they went on anti-Nepal. Completely, though in Nepal is probably another Hindu country where you don't really find any logic, but went on against Nepal, went on against Sri Lanka, went on against Maldives, and now Bangladesh. after Sheikh Hasina's departure. And the way they are doing it, it is such a unprofessional, crude manner, which is absolutely, anyone with any kind of little bit of brain will realize that this doesn't make any sense. But that's what they are trying to do for two things, because they have their own audience to keep their what called the their viewership or the eyeballs they want to catch. And there is a certain Indian society has moved into that direction, so that's what they really want to exploit that. And by doing that, they also think that they are supporting the Hindu nationalism of the ruling party or Modi's party. So that's what they are doing. But the kind of positions not only has ruined the relationship with Pakistan and China, they were never better, but with Nepal, with Maldives, with Sri Lanka, and now with Bangladesh. So that's the India's media, regular media. But the social media, what has happened on the social media scene, the social media, particularly from the traditionally, has been, or at least for the 15 years now, before even the India's Modi government came to power, it has been controlled or dominated by the Hindu nationalist forces. And after Modi government came to power, this has been always there. And Modi has been a social media guy from the very beginning, trying to use the social media. And the way, like any far-right forces that try to do these things, he has been doing it. Unfortunately, what is happening now, there are several people, because they understand media is not the right, giving the right noise, it's a partial, so they are younger people mostly dependent on the social media to get the news. And the social media, so that's why they want to keep the domination of social media. And the social media it's actually, though there is the controlling through the state and certain rules, regulations. Now even Pakistan has, yesterday there was another similar type of regulation, but they are following Indian method, because Indian police law, by that, they have the Indian laws to restrict any kind of social media. My social media account, my Twitter account, has been withheld in India for more than 1.5 years now, so nobody can see it. So that's happening. But so they want to keep the social media in their hand. And there is the Hindu nationalist forces. They do have their own people, those who are leading this movement. There are the kind of things they usually tell this, and suddenly you will see the similar tweets or similar posts coming from all these kind of influencer. Even the Modi gets influenced by it, is the liberal readers or their ministers and the party functionaries. They all try to repeat it. The question is, whatever they are doing within India, that is their problem, because that is they run the country, that is the Indian people have elected it. But what they have doing is that, as I mentioned, with the social media and media are really have become the main force of deteriorating India's relationship with most of its friendly countries. And also, even not only in the neighborhood, now they are a major enemy of Canada. Canada is being seen as a huge enemy. So all kinds of things, you will see very, very farcical and absolutely without putting there any thought, without looking at India's interest. It is just propagating to certain kind of sector of the population, and with the Hindu nationalist agenda of the present government. So Bangladesh should not feel alone into this, that is only getting the Indian social media. There are many other countries. So that's what I'm saying.
So yeah, Professor Swain, I will break my serial. I will ask you a follow-up question in this regard, okay? So this India's pro-government media, this nationalistic, Zingoistic media, all the Zingoism, they call it India, the Godi media term, the term is that. When Indian national discourse social media discourse is so much controlled by this nationalistic religious jingoism. So now we hear India is on the rise, India is growing, India is going somewhere. Question, India is rising to where? India rising to pre-World War II imperial Japan, India rising to become another German, World War II, pre-World War II German, or present day Soviet Russia, or India rising to becoming a superpower like European Union or United States or some other liberal democratic country, with this kind of media landscape being growing?
Yeah, I think that's the way things have been. Particularly, the media has been manipulated, or media knowingly or media willingly being manipulated as a reason given to you, and also media is being manipulated by the region to give these informations that India has become a superpower, has become quite powerful economically, while it doesn't really, and any other international press, or whenever it brings out the different indexes, different ways that all these kind of things in the hunger index, you name it, in the freedom index, whatever the index, India has gone down. That is considered as a foreign agenda. The Soros is supporting these things and all these kind of things. But at the same time, also the claim that the Modi has very good relationship with all the world leaders, is friends with everybody. Those kind of things which always keep on feeding to the people through the media. But the reason is that that's what I'm saying. The media and social media have become the weapon in the hands of the present regime to hide the failures, give them a certain kind of a binary, Hindu-Muslim binary, always talking about how the imaginary exploitation was taking place in the Mughal era, trying to find temples under each and every mosque. You don't really, that's not the way you build a country. You build a country with bringing country together. And this is something which they absolutely forget, that India, two things which you need to know. India, to be a powerful country, forget about superpower, a regional power. India must have a good relations with the neighboring country. Give me one country where India has a good neighborly relations among its neighbors, not even in Bhutan. So I think this is somehow the media fails to show that. And look at relationship between India and Bangladesh. And I have been telling that, not now, for telling that for ages, that this is where the way geography is. India and Bangladesh, they are mutually dependent on each other for development and security. They cannot really think if one gets bad, the other one will be affected. There is no way you can really do it. So, because the way, if any person with a little bit of brain or little bit of understanding will look at the geography, look at this, both sides, I'm talking about both Indian side and Bangladesh side, they need to realize they have to work together. They have to find a way of how to work together. And those working together should come on the basis of mutual respect, mutual acceptance, with depending on the understanding each other's sensitiveness, and not acting somebody as a big brother or a bully. You cannot really do that. And that's what's happening. And I think, unfortunately, media and social media have become an ammunition to pursue that kind of agenda, and which is really deteriorating relationship with many other neighboring countries and foreign countries, particularly with the Bangladesh, which is very important for India's national security in many ways.
To add insult to the injury, George Soros' son has very recently visited Professor Yunus. So that doesn't, that will not go well in Indian capital to start with, So my next question is to John. John, I'm asking you this question. I'm not asking for an insider info. I'm not asking you this question as a former diplomat based in Bangladesh or Pakistan. I'm asking you this question as a political observer, as a editor at large of South Asia Perspective. So in Bangladesh, there has been a widespread belief until up to August 5th that RAW is pervasive in Bangladesh. They are deeply entrenched. RAW means Research Analysis Wing of Indian Intelligence Agency. They're deeply entrenched in each government apparatus, and their clout in Bangladesh politics is ironclad. After seeing August 5 now, and almost near annihilation of Awamin League in almost all spheres of Bangladesh, how that perception is RAW is there everywhere, in every single brick of Bangladesh, RAW has a audio machine there, how that perception stands now. And in all practicality, how significantly a foreign intelligence agency can influence tectonic level events in another country in this 2024 era. And also, what Bangladesh like to, this is the second question in the same point I'm telling you, what Bangladeshis like to feel proud of in a very rather ironic way. Is Bangladesh really a prized resource in the current India, China, USA triangular affair? John.
Thanks. Those are great questions. So when we talk about the instruments of national power, any country has multiple instruments that they can use. You know, one easy way of thinking about this is using the acronym of DIME, D-I-M-E. You have diplomatic instruments, you have information instruments, you have military instruments, and you have economic instruments. So all countries, to one degree or another, use these different instruments to advance their policy goals. But I think you touched on something very important, which is the perception and the reality. While I have no doubt that India and the United States are using the tools at their disposal to advance their agendas in Bangladesh and elsewhere, I think Bangladeshis, by and large, tend to overestimate the influence of foreign actors. Again, as somebody who spent over 30 years working in the United States government, I wish that the United States had the level of influence and power that many people ascribe to us. When it comes to the events of July and August of 2024, even though I wasn't in government, from my contacts with people in the United States government, I can certainly say that the United States government was surprised by how quickly the situation developed in July and August. I don't have similar insights into Indian thinking, but from the outside looking at India's response, I also have a sense that India was surprised, as were many within Bangladesh, including within the ruling Awami League. If they had anticipated that this would all happen, if foreign entities had had an advance warning of what was going to happen, they would have indicated this to their friends and allies who may have acted in a different manner. So again, I think the way things evolved in July and August was very much a spontaneous development led by the people of Bangladesh. So again, I think as all of us think about the future, including the people of Bangladesh and Bangladesh government, while international relationships are important and while partnerships are important, at the end of the day, the people of Bangladesh will determine their own destiny. And I think this is important to remember for everyone involved.
Thank you. Shoufiq?
Professor
Now,
Swain.
also, second question I asked you about how is Bangladesh really a prized piece of land in India, China, USA triangular affair?
Sure. So obviously, the issue of a rising China and how that rise is managed is probably the critical geopolitical issue of our times. It affects the United States, it affects great powers, and it affects smaller powers. So the United States and its partners, to include India, Australia, and Japan, who have come together in an organization called the Quad, we certainly have a vision, our collective vision, for a free and open Indo-Pacific. And it was no accident that the first major diplomatic initiative of the Trump administration was to bring together the foreign ministers of the Quad countries. And you can see that they met with Secretary of State Rubio on his first day, and the Quad issued a statement. I have been arguing consistently that the success of Bangladesh is important for the United States and for the Quad, because what it does is it provides an alternative model. For many years, Beijing has put forward a model of autocratic, less than democratic government with economic growth as being the future. And they've used this to both justify their own activities and to try to influence others in the region. A functioning democratic country like Bangladesh wishes to become is a threat to this model. And again, on this regard, I find it ironic when I see the Chinese ambassador, meeting with whether it be the Jamaat Islami or the students and talking about the importance of democracy and elections when you look at China's own history. But be that as it may, certainly the United States and India have an interest in how Bangladesh develops. But the conspiracy theorists, again, these who put forward these fantasies, who speculate about the importance of a U.S. military base on St. Martin Island, are just simply spinning a tale that justifies their own actions rather than reflecting any reality. So the United States cares about Bangladesh. The United States will invest diplomatic and other resources in building that relationship. But again, I think it's a mistake to overestimate the importance of Bangladesh geostrategically for the United States.
Thank you, John. Shafiq.
Professor Swain, my next question to you is a little bit broad stroke. Like during particularly the last 10 years, when we, like activists for democracy, we are kind of feeling abandoned by the international media and particularly academics, because we thought like that the most of the stories that came out from Bangladesh was mostly about the economic development or others, unless something very big like a terrorist attack or something is happening. So we felt that compared to India is of course a huge country, even Pakistan, the international media and academic focus on Bangladesh has been very broad stroke, like not nuanced at all. Like when you see analysis of Pakistan, you see the analysis of like personally like Imran Khan, Nawaz Sharif, the army, far more nuanced, far more sophisticated. But Bangladesh, with a country of like 180 to 200 million people, we felt like kind of ignored, and we thought that like international media, I would particularly mention that Western media and also Western media, academics were kind of myopic about Bangladesh, only focusing on the economic stories, but not looking at the democracy and other angles at all. Like for example, we had no proper elections since 2008, and there has been like a horrendous abuse, human rights abuse going on in particularly last 10 years, the forced disappearance and other things. But these stories were not coming to the initial media at all. Like even I would say that a magazine, a newspaper like Guardian, which is left-oriented and other things, they had far less stories compared to the frequency than Economist, which is an establishment, like a house establishment publication. Economist has been far more critical, far more and sophisticated analysis of Bangladesh than a place like Guardian. So why do you think that there had been like a myopia about in media and academic community, Western academic community about Bangladesh? Is it a fault of ours that there's not sufficient voice in Bangladesh to promote our voice outside, or is there something else? Okay.
That's a very big question. I have answers. I might not be, it's not maybe politically correct, but let me try to give these answers. You see, it's not Bangladesh is the only one, or Bangladesh democratic activists in Bangladesh were the only one have been ignored. It's all over in the South. They have been ignored by the West. Would be, I wish, I mean, of course, Quad is a brilliant idea if it's really emphasized the cooperations among the democracies. But are these really democracies being taken into or even respected, or at least being nurtured or supported? No. So this is something, as I think I have out of frustration, I find that probably the Western academics do not consider the democracies in South are good for democracies, or the people are particularly are good enough to decide who will be governed. They need to be ruled. I think that's colonial mindset still is working, because that's the way I see. I mean, I understand among the policymakers, among the rulers, but also among the academics, even among the media. The idea of democracy, idea of human rights, idea of freedom of expression, idea of freedom of associations are very different in these countries, particularly in Europe and North America, compared to when we talk about in our case. There are only few countries where they do try to say that the democratic act or the democratic issues being highlighted in this part are the three countries, at least in Europe, and also to some extent that reflects in America: Russia, China, and Iran. I think there the focus is, if anything happens, okay, I mean, I'm no way defending those regimes. They're absolutely, but there are other countries, like you mentioned, Bangladesh used to be. I've been talking about India, Pakistan, Nepal, you name it, and most of the African countries. Do we talk about them? Do we really give that kind of people, those who are fighting for the democracy and human rights? So this has been ignored for a long time. And sometimes what happens, there is also a lack of understanding of the media and academics abroad, because this took, in my case, it took me ages to convince the people in the whomever I know, and they're really liberal ones, to know that Modi is not a Democrat. So this is somehow, so it's also lack of knowledge, what's happening in those countries, the lack of knowledge of kind of politics the actors are engaged. They usually look at it outside, some kind of economic reporting, particularly GDP, GNP growth. That's what somehow being manipulated in many cases. And also I find it, the people, those who are academics and journalists, those who are working on these countries, they are very fearful of not getting a visa or something to come and travel. If they don't do that, they will not be able to conduct their research. So I think there are several factors which are engaged, whereas I find it much more. I totally sympathize. I understand where you come from. This is exactly my frustration. That, look, guys, if you don't stand up, who will? I mean, what, your jobs are secured. You don't have to worry about your rent. You are not going to be arrested, put in the jail. If you don't stand up, who will stand up? But that's what never happens, because some people, even some, those are also Western academics, those who are studying our countries, and also our academics, those who are also living abroad, diaspora academics. They are also scared of going back to their country, or they sometimes they're also very much happy with a little bit of recognition they get when the ministers get invited to the embassies, or when they go, they usually get a little bit more attention back home, and that's what really make them a very different characters, while they really are failing in their basic duties of what they should do.
Thank you, Professor Swain. I have the next question. Before I go on to the next question, I will take a few minutes time reminiscing my childhood, my past, my life in Bangladesh. We grew up subscribing a weekly magazine called Weekly Desh. It is a weekly Bangla literature weekly from Anandobajar Patrika House in Calcutta. It was one of the highest circulating weekly magazine in Dhaka. I was a poor kid, a school from middle class Dhaka, with almost no pocket money. Whatever money I had, I would go to the newspaper stall and buy that week's India Today, the magazine. It was, for me, it was the gold standard of English learning and news. It was, I very proud to own the new version of the India Today. And sometimes once a month, I will foray into the old book market in Nilkhet, Dhaka, and purchase old issues of New Yorker and Time. But a new India Today in my hand was proud moment for me. And then also my one of my most favorite Bollywood movie. I'm not a very Bollywood fan. I don't watch Bollywood, but one of the movies that really touched me deep is Sholay. Sholay brought in diversity, inclusion in 70s, what Hollywood did 20 years later, the way they incorporated religious minorities and promoted them in Sholay. And I used to be a hardcore supporter of India's cricket team. I don't know what happened to India, what happened to me, at what point I transitioned. I'm now any other country but India in terms of cricket. So I don't know. Now Sholay movies are being changed into a nationalistic movies, war against Bangladesh, war against Pakistan, and India Today has become one of this mouthpiece of their headlining in main page completely false lies. India Today, like newspaper. So is it only for some West Bengal vote for BJP, this kind of campaign? Is it for to keep Modi eventually win West Bengal? Or is it more than that? Why India has lost me? Why we have no reason, they had no reason to lose me. I have been their fan all along. Is it for simply local political calculation?
You want me to answer that?
Yeah.
That's what I guessed. I mean,
Yes.
no, this is really something, because I will, you told you about your time, but in Bangladesh, but I'm telling you my time in Bangladesh when in 93 to 95, I used to go to Bangladesh quite often, almost half the year. I used to spend every year there in the TCS guest house, Teacher Student Center guest house in Dhaka University. There I was staying. And I was, those days, Bangladesh was not the main news in India. It was in Bangladesh, India was the main news, particularly that time, much more anti-India news was coming, particularly the Faraka, the water which was the India was taking that time was being covered in the Indian Bangladesh media. And I used to think, why India is so much into this Bangladeshi newspaper? I mean, but there was a absolutely very cordial relationship, even if that time not Hasina was in power. There was never I was feeling any way being an Indian of being treated in any different manner within Bangladesh. I was being treated with very much love and respect wherever I was going. I traveled quite a lot those 3 years in all parts of Bangladesh. It was only in the media, but it has never gone into this political things. It was still, India was somehow, as you mentioned, a kind of a democracy, the way the brother to need to look up. What has happened, as I mentioned some time back, that Bangladesh has become Pakistan because for Indian total political Hindu nationalist politics. Hindu nationalist politics in India is not really trying its best not to project China as its threat, because there, vis-a-vis China, it doesn't have the power to show that, look, we can really, because even if China has been occupying parts of India in 2020, even the Indian government, or particularly Modi, has not even taken the name of China, because they don't want China part to come into the picture. Even they have asked United States not to bring up this issue with China because they don't want that matter. Whereas they have been always about Pakistan. The Pakistan issue, there is a little bit of change has taken place after Imran Khan, when the new government has come in, Sharif government with the military. The relationship between India and Pakistan has been to somehow a kind of in a way that they were trying to find some things. They're not really hyperbole anymore, neither in Pakistan side nor in Indian side. So they're not really making any kind of noise. Coming about Maldives, it's a too small country. It's having, you cannot create an enemy from a bigger enemy from the Maldives, or Nepal is a mostly Hindu country, so you can't really create it. So Bangladesh has become the new weapon into the hands of the Indian government for some time now. It's not only because if you look at it, it started with Assam. It's not in West Bengal. It started with the Citizenship Amendment Act, the National Register of Citizens. Bangladesh, calling the Modi's right-hand man calling Bangladeshis as termites. This is going on for some time, and look at it. If you look at it recently, the one of the Bollywood actor, you were talking about Bollywood, one of the Bollywood actor who was attacked, and they brought out different names. Finally, they found out somebody who is from Bangladesh who has been attacking him, though his image and the image which was being circulated in the beginning was not really matching. So Bangladesh, as I see it, is being used by the present regime for some time now. Particularly, it was in Assam. That's why they came into power twice. In West Bengal, they have become the major party, and the West Bengal has become, they were nowhere. But in Assam, when I was doing work in the 90s, they were nowhere. Now we're running the whole country. They have been in the Northeast. But again, the Bangladeshis have become, or the so-called Bangladeshi illegal immigrants have become a major issue in Delhi election now, which Delhi is being election taking place. So it is, because it's again is being used for Hindu nationalist government in India for its own political purposes of showing everybody, any Indian Muslim as a Bangladeshi, and anyone who that's the way they want to create this kind of uncertainty among the Muslims and create a certain kind of put their blame, because economically they are not really doing. You might think that economically is a successful. It's again the same economic success which Hasina was talking about. Is the manipulations or some crony are getting the money, but it's not really going into the people. So I think this is where the Bangladesh, I would rather say that you have given the Hindu nationalist government particularly a weapon to use against the democracy in India. I'm joking, but that's what it is now. So,
thank you so much.
John, my next question is to you. It's about the foreign policy community in Bangladesh. You know perhaps far more than me about this issue, even for Bangladesh than me. So you can correct me if I am wrong. So I feel that in Bangladesh, there's no proper foreign policy community. I mean that in the last 10, 15 years, Bangladesh has been navigating this multipolar world balancing between India, China, USA, by only just a few people, Sheikh Hasina and the people that you favor, like just maybe 3 or 4 people decided foreign policy. And of course, Bangladesh has not been a democracy, and there has been no open debates about these issues in parliament or anywhere. So people analyze their issues, analyze what is happening, but they actually had no input in it. So it was just like a very elite-driven process, and the people, those are doing that. So and the Bangladesh Foreign Services, in Bangladesh, we call the civil service exam the BCS. In the BCS, the topmost people, the most brilliant students, they usually go to the foreign service, and But we say that Bangladesh diplomatic have mostly been like they are foreign protocol officers and those who manage when the dignitaries visit, and visa officers. Like we see very little input from these brilliant people, those who go into the foreign services about what's actually going on in the global affair. They have almost no voices. So my question to you is that since we are hoping to become a democracy and Bangladesh media and community has been a lot more vibrant, so we hope to become more like USA or even India, where foreign policy debates are taking place in parliament. Jaishankar has to defend his policies, although like you may say that it's still dominated and slanted. But like we hope to that Bangladesh foreign policy will be more people driven. The people will have their say. But the question is, for a like a for a less powerful country like Bangladesh, do you think that is it a good thing or bad thing if the people have more say in the foreign policy? Because having people more say in policy may not be sometimes good idea at all. Like people, but because people have like a fleeting emotions, like a fleeting, or they have like some kind of tendencies that may go against that. So just from a foreign policy expert point of view, how do you judge that, like in the coming days when Bangladesh foreign policy may become more like a more democracy driven, more broader? What do you think?
Great. That's a great question. I'm going to talk about the big picture first, and then I'll get to the specifics. One of my focuses in recent times has been to highlight the importance of the reform agenda that the interim government is pursuing. And I say this because, in my view, this is kind of a fourth chance for Bangladesh. It's not a second chance. The first chance was 1971. The second chance was after the fall of their Shah in 1990-91. The third chance was during the caretaker period of 2007, 2008. And now this is a fourth chance for Bangladesh to get things right. Over these past 15, 16 years in particular, you've seen deterioration of institutions, whether they be governmental institutions, educational institutions, across the board. And I think this certainly manifests itself when it comes to foreign policy. And as you rightly point out, there haven't been meaningful discussions in Bangladesh's parliament about foreign policy, in the media, in academia, and even in think tanks. So there's a lot that needs to be done to set Bangladesh on the right footing, and it can't all be done overnight. One of the suggestions that I've heard, in fact, was mentioned as recently as a program that Daily Star organized in Bangladesh in the last couple of days, was that Bangladesh should form a commission, just like the reform commissions that have looked at the constitution or law enforcement or the economy, and form a commission to look at Bangladesh's foreign policy and international affairs, bring together different stakeholders, obviously experts from government, some from academia, from think tanks, from the business community, across the board, to talk about this. One of the things that we hear often when it comes to Bangladesh's foreign policy is back to the earliest days of the country, with Sheikh Mujib's famous malice towards, friendship towards all, malice towards none. I mean, that's a good slogan, but in my view, that's really meaningless when it comes to foreign affairs. One can't have friendship towards all and malice towards none. That's just not a realistic foreign policy. Bangladesh has to make choices in foreign policy, just as in economic policy, it needs to make choices in its development policy. Across the board, choices need to be made, but these need to be informed choices based on a concept of how to maximize Bangladesh's interest. And there's a second part of this, that by having that kind of approach to foreign policy, it forces Bangladesh's partners to also improve their games. Again, one of the things that I always believed as a diplomat, whether I served in Bangladesh or elsewhere, is that my goal was for the United States to become the partner of choice for the country that I was serving in. Again, whether that be in economic realm, in the security realm, in the cultural realm. So individual countries, the United States, the European Union, India, even China, Russia, and other countries need to compete. And Bangladesh should look at its own interests. Here in America, we talk about America first these days, as President Trump and his administration seek to chart a new course for America in the world. I believe it's entirely appropriate for Bangladesh right now to pursue a policy of Bangladesh first. This means that Bangladesh needs to think about its interests, its values, what it wants to project on the world, and how it can maximize, the benefit to the people of Bangladesh. So I think you're absolutely correct that, as in other realms, Bangladesh's foreign policy establishment needs to improve its game.
Thank you. We are almost nearing our 1 hour mark. We will close our discussion soon. Before I go to my concluding remarks, I have a couple of questions to ask to John and Professor Swain each. John, you'll be visiting Bangladesh with Ambassador Mailam in March during Ramadan. So what is your experience about the Ramadan feasting in Bangladesh in the month of fasting?
Right. So again, many people have told me that it's a month of feasting as much as it's a month of fasting. Certainly, people's thoughts during the month of Ramadan often turn to more existential issues, but work continues. So while it's probably not an ideal time for us to visit Bangladesh, I'm looking forward to connecting with all of my friends and engaging and enjoying a number of iftars and talking with my friends as they prepare to celebrate the Eid at the end of the month.
Thank you. And Professor Swain, you spent some time in Bangladesh in 90s. Do you have any specific food you like from Dhaka, or any specific memory of this or that kind of food you really enjoyed during your stay?
Yeah, thank you. I have lots of fun memories from the Bangladesh, from Dhaka particularly. I've been, of course, traveled all over Bangladesh for my work, research work. I used to go to old Dhaka to get biryani in the rickshaw. So I usually go and get some biryani and then come back to my guest house and eat that. That was some things there, and there are lots of. That time there are a couple of Bangladeshi restaurants because I originally come from Odisha. So the real Bengali food is quite close to my food. So I usually go to this Bangladeshi restaurants to eat there. So those are and then particularly when I get invited, there was those days to several of my professors' friend in Dhaka University used to invite me for the dinner, and then I needed to go for 4 or 5 kilometers walk because you eat so much that you need to walk. And those days it was quite okay to walk into the what you call the parade ground was there. The next to it, the big Sarod Uddan. So there I used to take a long walk. So I wish I could. I was last time I was in '97 for training for the environmental journalist, and after that I haven't been. I would look forward to. I will soon try to find a way to go to Bangladesh.
Sure. And the thing is that you told about 90s, Bangladesh's dine out scene has dramatically changed since in last 20 years. Nowadays, there are very many every corner, very high-end restaurants. Now, middle class has only one thing to do, dine out. They don't have too much thing to do. So restaurant, good Bangladeshi food, good local food, good international food. Now Dhaka's food scene has mushroomed like anything. So if we ever can go without erasing alarm bell in India, you will enjoy the food scene in Dhaka. So, so
inshallah, it will be soon probably. Yeah.
So hopefully, we look forward to in Dhaka. So we are near end, and I want to conclude with one of my personal as a comment as a person, as a Muslim of Bangladesh origin. In this Indo-Pak conversation, the 800-pound gorilla in the room is Hindu-Muslim relationship. So there has been some attacks, atrocities happening after August 5th, government fall. And this is not new to Bangladesh. Every time Awami League government has been removed, there has been similar incidences happen. When this happened, this is all over in Indian media. But only 3 years ago, for 6 days in a row in Awami League regime in 2021 October, there has been much more systematic attack on Hindus based on a political incitement. So these are there. We cannot ignore that. There is a debate what proportion of them are political, which I believe it is mostly political retribution. I completely cannot ignore whether there are religious indications there also. But what I can tell between Bangladesh and India at people level, at personal level, there is no lack of trust, love, respect. The most famous doctor in Bangladesh is probably Professor Devi Shetty, an Indian Hindu physician, running a religious hospital in South India. Bangladeshi doctors, Bangladeshi patients, they cannot feel comfortable until they go to India, talk to a Hindu doctor, get their blessings. Very recently, one of my relatives, he is a Jamaat Islami member. One of my relatives, he's the only member of Jamaat Islami in Bangladesh. I'm a relatives there. He had his wife's very complicated surgery done. He did his research, all surgeons, and he selected a doctor, a Hindu, who happened to be my friend also, but I found out that he selected a Hindu doctor. Bangladeshi people, we all grew up a reading literature from West Bengal, Sunil Gangabadhyay, Shishindu, Samaresh, all the leading West Bengal Hindu literature. Bangladeshi people know about more of a Hindu West Bengal culture than their own culture because they grew up reading in Indian books. We like to shop in India. Our best tourism country is in India. So in personal level, there is no lost love between the people. The problem is when politics gets at the top of it and tries to make a toxic environment. And I hope at some point, the people's love, the people's the feeling of fraternity, that will prevail over superimposed politics. And with this saying, I will end today's discussion. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.